And we're live. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Dinichantes, and this is Wyrd. This is the third season of Wyrd, and now we have video, as you can see. And I hope, I hope this brings you the best of the Norse mythology and Norse stories, and actually the best talks and the best interviews and the best chats we can have here. For this first video version of the Weird podcast, I bring you a good friend of mine. Actually, it wouldn't be fair any other way, right? His name is André Henriques. He's also Portuguese, as you can probably tell by the name. He has been, and now I'm reading, as you can also see, he has been an Ethan for over 25 years, and initially in Portugal, and the last 15 years in the UK. He's been an active pagan in Ethan communities in Norwich, London, and different European countries, having led many different ceremonies, lectures, and workshops on the subject of the northern traditions of Europe. He has a master's degree in cultural astronomy and pursued academic research for his dissertation on the practices of cosmology of contemporary Norse inspired pagans, focusing on the oracular and shamanic practices of present day Seidr. For several years, he has offered ceremonies and workshops at the well known Treadwell's Bookshop in London, and he's going to have one soon, so we're going to talk about that later. Workshop topics have included introduction to heathenry, Norse gods and goddesses, runes, Seidr, and Old Norse cosmology. So let's welcome this very good friend of mine, André Henriques. Here he is.
Hello, Marco. How are you?
Hello, Andrea. How are you?
I'm
You
very
are.
well, thank you, and thank you for the invitation and be with you on your new season of your podcast.
You'll always be very welcome here. I mean, this is, after all, your home as well. I mean, not only Portugal, but we had kind of started our paths more or less at the same time. I remember a blot in a friend's house where we would be exchanging Norse stories, and you're going to tell one today, but let's not jump to that yet. Um, so tell us a little bit about yourself. What have you been doing, Andre?
Well, so as you mentioned, yes, we in the beginning of our pagan paths, we have been we were sharing paths. We had some different groups of friends and magical groups that we were in together, and we did indeed share some Norse or heathen ceremonies. And then from then on, I a few years after that, I moved to the UK, and I've been here in the UK for the last 15 years, as you said in my short introduction. And so also here in the UK, I've been in different groups, both heathen and other traditions as well that I'm interested in, but especially in heathenry, that has been always my core path, and that's where I have always been more actively involved in the UK pagan scene. So I've done different workshops and lectures and ceremonies. Many of them private, some of them public. Also in different European settings, especially in terms of a network of heathen inclusive heathen organizations. Things have developed, one thing led to another, and started doing things at Treadwell's, this bookshop where I have always been a regular attendee. I was always there for any
And a
kind of
regular customer as well, right?
I look at it. I was already, that was one of the things that I was really looking forward in London, was just to visit Treadwell's when I was there. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up moving to the UK. And then while I was still in Norwich, I was already going regularly to Treadwell's. That's where I met many of the pagan friends that I still have today. And that's when my journey started. And now it's a big.
One of those pagan friends being Kattie Gerrard.
That's right.
Uh,
That's right. Yes,
do you
actually.
want to tell us about your next course you're gonna have at Federals?
Okay, we can start with that. Yes. So, one of the things that I'm very interested in different ways, both in academic research and also as a practitioner, is the Seidr practice. So, this Old Norse shamanistic practice, we can call it like that, as a very kind of a general term of shamanism. And this is a practice that has different approaches, and different practitioners do it in different ways. And as part of my master dissertation, I was looking at how different practitioners in different countries in Europe were practicing, what kind of influences they were having, and also what kind of impact that those experiences of being between the worlds, or channeling answers from other realms or from spirits, how that would impact on their worldview and on their outlook on life. And I had already known Kattie Gerrard for several years. In fact, I think I met her at Travels, and we had been in several ceremonies together. Some of the Seidr ceremonies from Katie's, let us say, a particular style of Seidr that she also describes on her Seidr book. And she was also one of the people that I interviewed for my dissertation. And and we were in touch. And then now later on, when I was doing events for Treadwell, so we started doing some conversations, or magical conversations, and I challenged Katie to have a conversation with me about Cider for a Treadwell's event. And after that, we continued talking, and we both wanted to do more public events again, after not only before the pandemic, but some years even before the pandemic, there were no, for different reasons, there were no, say, the events that we knew of here in the UK. So yeah, we talked a bit more about it. Okay, let's start doing a course, and then this course for Treadles came up. And in the last couple of years, most of the things have been online, as as needs must during a pandemic. And
Yeah.
and then, but for this particular course, we are doing the main sessions, and we have four weekly sessions. So always on a Thursday through September, of 2 hour sessions. But then we're going to finish with a live event at Treadles for everyone who would like to attend, a ritual ceremony, a Seidr ceremony that we can
Hopefully, I'll be
also.
there.
Okay,
I
that's
really,
great to
I
hear
really
as
want
well.
to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a great opportunity also for us to be on the new revamped Treadwells room, because Treadwells had also some renovation while the things were closed, and there were not events happening there. So yes, I think it's going to be a very nice and interesting and probably deep return to the Treadwells live space. But for
Great.
anyone who is listening to us and is not able to be in London, we have the online session. So the main part of the course, the four weekly sessions, are going to be on a Thursday at 7 p.m. throughout September, and you can check all the details on the Travels Bookshop website.
Great. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about your path in Seidr, and how did you begin doing it? What led to it? Tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So I my path insider is I'm I can be considered a practitioner, but I am not a seer. Okay, and that is a main distinction between what Katie does, for instance, and what I do. So what has happened throughout the years, especially in the European network of organizations, that we were having different gatherings, and especially one in Germany in 2012 was very much focused on science, and there were several practitioners there. And my partner Amanda also, she is a seer from childhood, and she also got involved and sat on a high seat. And for the people who never heard about it, so
Yeah.
there are very different variations of cider in terms of shamanic practice. And in the Old Norse sources, we can also hear stories about cider being used to hypnotize people, almost, to put spells on the minds of people. but you can also use that to send spells to actually kill people or make them ill. You can also use Seidr to weather magic, to change the weather, to bring storms into your enemies so that their boats would sink. But the more kind of well-known varieties of Seidr is what we call now in modern times oracular Seidr. And this is
Yeah.
this Seidr where there is a seer that sits, especially on a platform or on a seat that is a bit distanced or higher.
It's something that comes from the Eric the Red saga, right?
That's correct. Yes, that's this main saga. And there is this episode in Greenland where there is this seer that visits this village, and the village is going through some hard times with famine and disease. And she goes there, and after several details, now there is the ceremony itself where she is sat on a platform, a Seidhallir, as you says in Old Norse, and then there is a group of women that sits around the seer, and then one of the women sings a magical song, a Vardlokur, a spell song in some way or the other, and that kind of seems to attract the spirits or put the seer also in a good altered state to
Altered state of
communicate
mind.
with the spirits, and then people start asking questions to the seer, and she answers those questions sometimes in very kind of a definite and
There are several opinions where the seer goes while in that state. Some people actually say Helheim. Some people just say that she's just more aware of what's around her. What do you believe in?
Well, as I said, because I have not been sitting in the chair myself, so I can only go for what people tell me. And I've met many people, and that's just to wrap this up. So, and my role in the Seder ceremonies is to hold the space, is to hold the ritualistic part of putting
The master of ceremonies.
something like that. Yes, where all the place is all kind of magically held, and everybody's in the same tune, and we coordinate the chant, and I take care of the seer. So then the seer goes into this altered state, and then I am the one taking the people one person at a time to the seer. They ask the question, they receive the answer, and then we take them back, and then somehow also with my intuition, then I know when it is time to stop, because the seers is like being underwater. The more you are, the more kind of it takes you the longer you are underwater, then the longer it takes you to then get back to be a normal state again. And yeah, we don't want to risk anyone's health and and minds. So I need to know when it's time for a seer, either an experienced seer or a less experienced seer, to come back. And so then we finish the ceremony, or sometimes there has been other times where we have different people playing that role of the seer, and we just one of the persons moves away from the high seat and starts kind of coming back to the let us say more ordinary mind experience, and but another person goes back into the seat, and we start again another let us say set of chanting, and another way of another journey of this seer going. Now, regarding your question about what is happening in the seer, so most of the people that I spoke with, they do have some kind of a journey, what is now what we call shamanic journey in our modern times, in the modern practitioner times. It's more very much inspired by the neo shamanism, and many people call it, or core shamanism from Michael Harner, which it is one of the things that is more widely available, and it is a normal, let us say, starting up step in this journey of you becoming a seer, of you becoming some kind of a person that can communicate between the worlds, between our world of man and other worlds, be it of gods, be it of spirits, be it of other entities that may be out there. So I don't think there is any right answer. If somebody thinks that the spirits are just here, or if somebody has to journey. I think, one of the key things that happens in the journeying, this is my opinion, is that we are tricking our minds into actually with using symbols, using some kind of devices to allow some part of our consciousness to go beyond our ordinary mind world and going into this other world where you can interact with some things.
Mhm.
And
I believe. Sorry to interrupt you, Andre, but I believe that's like the whole core of actually doing magic and um, acting through symbols or through some sort of words or symbology or anything that really puts you in the right mindset so that you can access the information that is always available. Is that how you think as well?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. We use the techniques or the mechanisms that we need for different functions in our life. Like you can eat with your hands, but you can also eat with a fork, right? And it's just two different ways of doing the same action. And in spiritual practices, you need to find the ones that you are more comfortable with. And that's one of the beauties of paganism, is that allows you flexibility to decide what are the best tools that you want to practice your spirituality with. And inside there, there are different varieties. And some people prefer drumming, other people prefer singing, other people prefer dancing, other people.
Swaying, right?
Yeah,
From one side
exactly,
to the other.
exactly. So there is a variety of tools. And then what is important is that this person who has the role of the seer, which is quite a big responsibility, when people can ask you very personal questions about their lives, about their concerns, about some of their loved ones. So there's a responsibility in that. And obviously, who is people who are from the outside may just think, oh, they are just making things up, as they go along, because that's also sometimes the experience in mediumship, you know. And what I can say is that the people that I have been in ceremonies with, people that I trust, people that are very good friends, very very close people, and including my partner, and I know that they are not making it up. I know
Yeah.
that sometimes, people that I've been in ceremonies with, they don't even remember what happened. We have to tell them, oh, look, you said this. Oh, did I don't remember anything about that. And a lot of times, some of those answers are really oracular in the sense of the mystery of it. That you are given symbols, you are given kind of a very almost cryptic sentences that then part of actually of unraveling that answer is going through the decision making, the process of that question that you were initially asking for. So it is a very multi-layered kind of process. And when you are asking a question, it does not happen like when you mentioned the Eric the Red saga. It doesn't usually happen like that in the Net saga, where we are told, oh, you are going to marry in this place, but it's not going to work very well, and then you're going to go to Norway, and then in there you're going to create a lineage of people, and that's what and actually answer that the Greenland Sirva says to the lady who sang the song.
Mhm.
And that's not the experience of nowadays how people practice Seidr. It's fate is
Yeah,
negotiable.
it's people have to understand it's a very different thing from what the old Norse people experienced. It's not. I mean, it can be a little bit close, but it has nothing to do with it. It has something to do with it in the sense that it tries to replicate some of the practices and some of the archetypes that were called at that time, but we really can't tell, can we?
No, that's right. When we had, it's a big saga, and we have 3 or 4 pages of this particular episode. The sagas were written already in Christian times. Some of those episodes that happen in the sagas are maybe a bit more, let us say, theatralized just for cinematic effect. And so what we have is just some glimpses of what could have happened in the past. Yeah, and and some people really try just to be very much on the reconstructionist approach and just try to research and research more about how it was in the past so that we can retrieve that. Now, I don't believe we have enough resources to do that. We just don't have enough information. We don't have any words written by the Norse people themselves, by the pagan Norse people themselves, about what they were doing. We only have accounts of Christians or accounts sometimes from other cultures about what they were doing. So we don't really know what they thought about what was happening. And given that, so we don't have any kind of a very clear description of rituals, very clear description of what people thought about gods, about spirits. So that is one problem. And then the other problem is we are not the Norse people from 1,000 years ago. We are modern people in a whole different world, very much disconnected from nature, or at least detached from nature. At least it's part of our urban, modern living. Our minds are in a very different place. The use of our rational thinking and the almost the how do I say it? The suspiciousness of our intuition, of
Yeah, the
our
doubts, the natural doubts about our intuition.
yeah, I mean, of the people who have visions. Oh, how many people have been locked up and been taken into mental hospitals and been given lots of medicine because they were seeing things. Where actually, not that long ago, they were seeing as priests and priestesses because they had a communion with the different worlds. So there are
And
many
not
different.
that long ago, they're being pursued for it as well, right?
Yes, persecuted
Uh,
until now, but the people are still persecuted now. If you are a child,
it's
and
in a
many
different way.
childs have some kind of mediumship, and if you are, continuing with that during school, yeah, you may have to go into some psychologist and some kind of mental health, and until you are convinced that all that you are seeing is not real. And unfortunately, that has been the story of many people I know.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's one of the, let us say, pull mechanisms of people wanting to know more about paganism is that people have this phenomenon they have been experiencing throughout their lives that they cannot explain. And if they talk to many people, they will just tell them, "Look, you're crazy." So with paganism is actually a safer way for people to meet others who have this kind of experiences, have this kind of gifts or curses, because it's both, because some of the times the visions can be scary, and knowing that there are lots of other entities around can be scary. But what we are trying to give in people who are talking more about these subjects is giving some kind of a understanding that this is firstly normal, has happened throughout human existence, as far as we know, humans, and then we can use particular cultures to frame these experiences. And to some seers who were practicing Seidr, or that were attracted to Seidr, they were having this experience. With Seidr, they were able to control them better. They were also able to label beings better. Which ones are ancestors, which ones are other beings, nature spirits, spirits of stones or trees or springs. And yeah, and I see here also one of our views that they also see that people. I'm not sure if it was a kind of a quote from a movie,
It's and they're cool as fuck. So we can say
but
actually say
or if it is that he has experienced. But to people that have experienced them throughout their lives, sometimes they are not as cool. They are actually very scary. But yeah, but so if we can, as practitioners of paganism in general, help other people come to terms with their abilities, and then use those abilities to the benefit of their communities. Yeah, and say the ceremonies are a way of people can then use their skills to benefit other people. And I have had many
to
times.
help.
I asked questions many times myself, and I had answers. Some of them more cryptic than others, but many of them were in transition points of my life, and they all made sense to me. They all made sense. Some of them made perfect sense to the extent that I made decisions based on that, and that changed my life. Other ones, they just made sense because things happen as the symbols sometimes were leaning to behind. Other ones, I'm still unraveling, and that's how
Yeah,
that's how it goes. Yeah.
it's part of the mystery.
Mm.
So I asked you to tell a little story, of course, based on Norse mythology, and this is for those of you who have listened to previous episodes of the Weird podcast. You know that the guest is always invited to tell us a little story, and you chose a story that I'm very fond of. Um, so I'm going to leave you to tell the story, and I'm going to disappear magically from the screen as you tell us more about Frey and Gerd.
Very well, thank you, Marco. So just to give some continuity before we step into the story itself, it is said that the Seidr arts were arts that were particularly known by Freya, and Freya is a goddess of beauty, of love, but also of desire, and in my view, in my spirituality view, it's a view of embracing everything and being conjoined with everything. And Freya has a brother called Frey. And these names, Freya and Frey, may be just titles because they can just mean lady and lord. So Frey can just mean lord. And you have an image of Frey on this side, just up in here from one of my favorite artists, Amanda Lindup. And yeah, so Frey is this god of abundance, of plentifulness, of the fruits of the earth, and he also rules the good weather, the nice sun and the gentle rain that allows the crops to be fruitful. And he also is known as a ruler of the good times and of peaceful times, and where people are at peace and have enough of everything. So almost like a golden age, almost like a golden age. So Frey has many other attributes and other aspects of it. But this story that I'm just very kind of shortly summarized in my own way is the story of Frey and Gerd, a giantess. A giantess. And this comes from a poem from the Poetic Edda, a poem called Skirnir's Mal, the Lay of Skirnir, or the Ballad of Skirnir. And Skirnir will be always in this mythological time that we are now entering. Skirnir is the servant of Frey, and Skirnir means the shining one. And so our story begins when Frey is in the world of the gods in Asgard, and he sneaks into Odin's hall, and it sits on Odin's throne, Hildeskjalf. And from that throne, you are able to see what happens in all the worlds. And Frey sat in there, and he looked into the world of the giants of Jotunheim. And he looked into that, and Frey saw this beautiful maiden. Yes, because not all giants are ugly. Some of them are very beautiful too. And Frey found this maiden called Gerd, and he was love struck. He was completely, fallen in love in a way that he had never fallen before. It all seemed that the whole world would be lighted in a different, beautiful color since he saw that lady. But he had that vision, but he was at the same time very sad. And he was very sad because she was a giantess, and how no gods or elves would allow Frey to be with Gerd, to be with this beautiful lady. So he went into some kind of let us say, depression, and he was just very silent and not willing to engage. And his father Njord became the Njord is the god of the sea, father of Frey and Freya, of the plentifulness of the sea, where a lot of fish and treasure would come from. So Njord was very concerned with Frey's condition. So he asks Skirnir, the Shining One, his Frey's servant, to go and ask what was going on with Frey. So Skirnir approached Freya and asked, "So what's going on with you? Why are you so upset and so uninspired with life? You who are always so joyful and so have such a positive outlook on everything." And Frey replies to Skirnir, "Oh, my friend, I am in grief, and my grief is so great that even the sun cannot no longer light my life. I am very much in the dark. So tell me, as they say, Skirnir, we have grown up together. We have been together for quite a long time. Surely you can confide in me. What is the issue?" And Frey said, "I look into Jotunheim, and there is this house of Gimir. And Gimir is the father of this beautiful maiden that I saw. And her arms glittered, and from their gleam, everything would shine. The whole sky and the whole sea would be as beautiful as I have ever seen. But nobody will allow this union to go ahead, so I am completely lost and not knowing what to do." And Skirnir, understanding the situation, says, "Okay, I will speak with Gerd. Let's try to make some resolution of this. Give me your horse, and this horse that I know that you have, Freya, that goes through the dark worlds and jumps through the magical flames that are between the worlds. And I can go to the world of the giants. And give me also your sword that is so powerful fighting the giants. And I will go there and I will speak to Gerd on your behalf." So that it went, and Skirnir rode the Frey's horse, and he went like in a shamanic journey to this other world, the world of the giants, or maybe the underworld. We don't know for sure where it is. And he went through it, and he arrived at the gate of Gimir house. And there was plenty of big dogs, hounds there. And there was also a shepherd on a grave mound close by. And Skirnir looked at the shepherd and he asked, "Look, what is the best way for me to speak with Gimir's daughter?" And the shepherd said, "Oh, you must be suicidal, or you don't have any love for life, because why would you want to go into Gimir's house except to be killed?" And Skirnir, "Okay, well, if you cannot tell me anymore, thank you. But I have to fight that my day of death is already settled. If it is going to be today, so be it. But I will have to do this for my friend and Master Frey." We don't know exactly what happened. We only know that Gerd was in her house and suddenly heard a lot of noise, and she asked to her servants, "What noise is that? What happened? What happened there that is so loud that I can hear inside the house?" And then one of the servants just said, "Oh, there is a stranger here. Somebody is here." So we assume that Skirnir, either by fighting or either by jumping with his horse over the gate, he was able to enter Gimir's house. So he arrived there and put his horse there, grazing on the grass there. And Gerd, as a good hostess, first thing that she said when she says him, "Please come in. Would you like some mead? Would you like to just be and settle after your journey? But by the way, who are you? And are you a god? Are you an elf? Because you don't look like a giant." And Skirnir said, "Actually, I am here on behalf of Freyr. Freyr has seen you, and Freya would like to meet with you, and Frey would like to know if you would be willing to be, let us say, his partner. And as a blessing to that, I bring you 11 golden apples, possibly the golden apples of immortality of Idun, of the goddess that would give the apples that would make the god eternally young. And Skirnir offers these apples, but Gerd looks at him. I'm not interested in any apples. I have everything that I need here, and I certainly don't want to be with Frey in any kind of way. Oh, says Skirnir. Okay, well, in that sense, I have here another gift, and this is a very special gift. It's a ring that was burnt with Odin's son. So this is the ring Draupnir that was left in Baldur's funeral pyre. And it's a magical ring, a golden ring that every night 8 rings come out of it. So it's an ever-eternally source of wealth. And Gerd looks again very unconvinced to Skirnir and says, no, I have all the wealth I need. My father has all the wealth that we need here. We don't need your ring. Thank you anyway. You can go back. And Skirnir started getting impatient. And there are 2 versions of there is one version in the poems, and there is one version I'm going to tell you now, which is much more nice and adapted to our modern sensitivities. And I'm going to explain later on why I'm saying this version now. So Skirnir then offers Gerd Frey's sword, the sword that is magical sword that could fight all the giants. Then this sword can also be yours, Gerd, if you would like to be with Frey. And again, Gerd says no. And then Skirnir starts resorting into magic. And Skirnir has this magic staff, and he starts saying an incantation to try to convince Gerd that it is a good idea to meet Frey. Because maybe Gerd also was not keen on meeting Frey because of the difficulties of the relationship between giants and gods. Think about Romeo and Juliet story. Think about 2 different houses constantly at war with another. And then 2, let us say, youngsters of those houses wanting to be together. Maybe Skirnir sensed that Gerd was also at least curious of why was she, the attraction of Frey. Why was Frey so interested in knowing her? But Gerd would not be able to say just yes because of the difficulties of these 2 houses. And Skirnir maybe by knowing that with his magical staff was trying to overcome these reticences of that are just merely social constructs and our own, let's say, social order that we are all feel pushed to act on. And with his magic, Skirnir was just trying to do something different and allow Gerd to find in her own heart what would be her best option. And after that, Skirnir comes up with a magic wand that he remembered even where he collected this magic wand from a magical forest. And he says a charm and 3 runes. And we don't know exactly what happened inside Gerd, but something opened up. And suddenly, maybe all her fears and all her doubts about going against his father or whatever it was, maybe all those disappeared. And then Gerd said, yes, very well. I will meet Frey. And there is this breezeless grove called Bari in a forest fair and still. And then I agree that in 9 nights I will meet the son of Njord there. And Skirnir, in a very polite way, thanked Gerd, even though inside he was, woohoo, we managed to get to this agreement. my lord Frey will be very happy. So they agreed that, and Skinner went back on his journey on Frey's horse to the world of the gods. And even before he dismounted from the horse, Frey was already asking him, "How did it go? How did it go?" And Skinner said, "Yes, Gerd accepted. Gerd accepted to be with you, and in 9 nights in Bari, in this forest, in this beautiful, breezeless forest, you can meet Gerd." And Frey, for a moment, was happy, but then suddenly he was again not so happy. 9 nights, said Frey. How can I last 9 nights? Just one would be such a long one before I meet Gerd. 2 or 3 would be already a never-ending time. I'm still so much in pain to have to wait 9 nights to meet Gerd. And so this is how the poem ends. And as I mentioned, I did on the second half of the story, I did some let us say, variation on the story. The story itself is not so poetic, in the sense of Skirnir convinces Gerd with magic, but really with threatening magic. And at the time, there would be some kind of a theatrical version of this. Probably this is one of the poems that is clearly could be dramatized, and there are some scholars like Terry Gannell and his book Origins of Drama in Scandinavia that argue that this and other poems were theatrical or maybe magical ritual theater performances, and this could also be how the gods would take the upper hand always against the giants, and then there was this kind of let us say, more spell work against the will in this case of Gerd. But now, we don't like this kind of let us say, coercion into somebody doing something that they are not wanting to. So that is why my reason, and it's part of how I believe modern heathenry has to be, where we are not Norse people living 1,000 years ago, and whatever social norms they have, we are moderns. And to me, it makes sense that Frey and Gerd are in love, and then there is a magical process throughout which they can come together. And bearing in mind that Frey sometimes said to be the Lord of the world, and also a god of light, sometimes a god of the sun, or a god of plentifulness, as I mentioned earlier. And Gerd means enclosure, but can also be the enclosure of in a particular part of a field. It can be something like earth. Yeah, and some scholars have seen Gerd as a manifestation of some kind of an earth goddess. And then you have Skirnir, the shining one. Like, imagine that if the Frey is this source of light, and then you have this shining beam of life that is going into earth to fertilize it. And then from the union of sun and earth, then you have life. Then you have love. Then you have all the beautiful things that we as humans can enjoy. And that's the blessings of Frey. So, and we can see this in different levels. You can even see it on a consciousness level, of consciousness kind of almost incarnating into matter as well. There are many different myths in different cultures about that. So we can see this tale in different ways. And I hope you enjoyed my particular take on it. And I welcome other people to come up with their own versions of our modern tales, old Norse tales for the modern world.
That would actually be a great title for a book, just saying.
Yeah, you're right.
Old Norse tales for the modern world would be very, very interesting to read.
I mean, to be fair, you have some good retellings of the Norse poems, but they are more sticking to the sources because That's what they are trying
They're
to do.
supposed to do. Yes, yes, yes,
But
yes.
there are also few authors already who are coming up with new tales, and I firmly believe that we need creative, because if we think of it, from that time, we only now have a few texts from we don't know even when, and they were
Yeah.
written and rewritten, but they were oral tradition. And as we have this saying in Portuguese, every storyteller adds one more thing to the story, right? And you know exactly the same that I'm meaning, Marco, in Portuguese. So yeah, I think it's almost inevitable that with time and with more practitioners and more storytellers of our hidden tradition, that will happen. And we just have one variation here that I just tried my best to
And you
to
did
share
great,
with
man.
all of
You
your listeners.
it was great to hear you tell that story. You're a very good storyteller. That
Thank you.
was actually how we met. The first time we met, as I was telling a while ago, it was on a friend's house, and we were in a blot, and we were both sharing stories like this one about Norse
Mm,
mythology. It was in Fred's house,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, you remember that,
yeah.
um, and we were talking about at the time we were talking about dwarves, giants, and gods, and that's and all of a sudden it made very sense. Well, at that point in our lives, I guess, because we kind of stick to it.
Yeah, yeah. And so
um,
yeah, I mean that has been what 20 years ago, something like that.
a little more, I guess.
Maybe a bit more. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe in the 2000s. Yeah,
yeah,
in the
early
year
2000.
2000.
But that
Yeah.
that's yeah.
No, no, like the year 2000, maybe, or
No, a bit later than
2001.
that.
Yeah.
Until 2002, I was solitary. So yeah,
Okay, so it was from
yeah.
that point on, I guess.
Mm.
Um, but my point here is just that Gerd, the story about Gerd and Frey, as you put it, um, it's also a story about manifestation, right? Manifestation of wishes, um, and the well, let's put it this way: the will of Gerd, and I do believe that, as you put it, the as the original poem puts it, her will was a little bit bent to match with Frey's will, and it's also food for thought. I mean, it's cool to retell the story as we are doing, and to like to convey to our modern times and to our modern way of thinking, but also try to understand how they thought at that time. Why were they writing that? I think that's like one of the things that really interests me the most in Norse mythology, is trying to, through the stories, trying to understand how they thought, and how what was the magical process, the thing that sparkled, the the instant that made all the magic happen. um,
Yeah,
and with phrasing and Gerd's story, I believe it's about fertilization. It's about right. It's about the creation of life, and and I don't know. I kind of see this story as the story about fatherhood. Um, I mean, I started seeing it when I became a father,
mm,
and I did not look at it this way until I became a father 15 years ago. So I do believe that it's somehow um, what they share is like the sparkle that creates life, and there's no higher magic than this one, right? Than to create life, and that's what they actually do at the end of the story. Of course, that didn't really went well for Frey in the end. Like he lost his sword and Seidr. Well, that's and he ended up fighting with the horns of a deer, right?
That's right.
Uh,
Yes, yeah.
um,
Yeah, but Marco, just one thing that I would also like to add about what you were saying about how people thought at the time. One interesting thing is that most of our records that we have from that time, or the sagas or the poems, when it is about magic, magic is a lot of times cast in a bad light. It's usually spells that are harmful. Yeah, there's not that much magic that is to do nice things. Yeah, and that is probably because there was already a lot of censorship because all of these poems were written already in Christian times and possibly distorted. But even throughout the Viking period, right, from the 700s to the 1000s and pre-Christianization, there was already a lot of social change at the time and possibly religious changes as well. So all the what we know of the Germanic period from the Roman times up to the end of Viking times and the Christianization, there was a massive changes in all kinds of levels. So the traditions were also very fluid, and what we have is a few bits of a big puzzle where most of the pieces are gone, you
mhm.
know. And but the pieces that we have are all very dark. When it is about if there is an M of magic on the piece, it's usually dark, and that's a
Yeah.
shame. But that's what we have, and I don't
That
want to
kind of
make
leads that kind of leads to my next question for you,
okay.
which is, what are the challenges that the modern Ethan faces, and what is that thing being a
Yeah,
modern Ethan?
yeah. I mean, look, there are different challenges, of course. There are the more obvious ones that most people are aware of regarding inclusivity. And I don't discuss that much of politics, but that I'm part of a always inclusive history. So all the organizations or events always say very specifically that we are inclusive to all races, genders, and any kinds of abilities. So anyone from any part of the world that feels connected or at least wanting to explore
I mean, here we are, both
those
of us
traditions.
Portuguese, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We're from Portugal, and we have also some ancestry from the Swabians and the Visigoths,
Yeah.
but they did not they especially were not pagan for that long in Iberia, but it was from them that then the Christians reconquered Iberia from the Muslims. So there is some links there, but it's not the more important thing whether there was or there wasn't. I know people from Brazil who are very keen into history, and it's a whole different, um, distant more from terms of genetics. But that's again, we are going against my point, which is it doesn't matter if some spiritual experience calls you to a particular tradition, then there is something at least for you to explore. And if anyone wants to say otherwise, then they are not in touch with the majority of people, inclusive heathens and pagans today. They are definitely not in touch with how Norse people would think, because people in area 1,000 years ago, and let's have lots of scholars with lots of records that there were people from Africa and different parts of Europe also in the living in the Norse lands. That's established. And to them, to those people, Norse people, the concept even of some people being better than others because of how they look would not probably be very make any sense, to be honest. That's what some scholars say, and I direct people from the most latest book from Neil Price called The Children of Ash and Elm. It is what talks much more about society and cultural norms and also about that. So yes, Tiago, also one of our viewers mentioned it's "Oh Father," not "Some Father." That's a good point. I had never heard that one before, but that's a good one itself. Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So so that is the inclusive point, and that's how all the people that I engage with in Hit and Re have the same views. And unfortunately, there are other people who have other views, but they are the minority, and that's how it goes. But then there are other challenges that are, let us say, to me more relevant for what I do. Yeah, because I'm not as part of any kind of organization, so
Mhm.
I was in the past, but I at the moment I'm more focused on the spiritual side of Italy. Yeah, on the experiential side of Italy, because there is the risk when we have, even though we have just sources here and there, we have lots of them, and we have a very confusing amount of stuff that we need to sort out, and we need to have a lot of academic input on that, and a lot of Hitans sometimes they give too much emphasis on the academic scholarly research and not so much on experiential and spiritual experience aspects. So, and to me, that is one that is more
Mhm.
important.
And the other way around as well. Like, there has to be a balance.
There has to be a balance, absolutely. And I think one thing is knowing what comes from the sources, what is our own inspiration, okay? And especially authors should be very clear about that. And unfortunately, some are not, especially in runes. And as you probably know, Mark, we have a lot of writers that do all kinds of correspondences of runes
Yeah,
that there is nothing in the lore to do that. But I'm not saying that it is wrong. I'm just saying that they have to make it clear that it's their opinion of those correspondences, but that actually the lore we have is a lot more narrow, and then we can just feel, okay, this rune feels like the sun, so the sun links to this other thing. So okay, so we can have correspondences, but we need to make them very clear. And that is another, I think, maybe a challenge is that there is so many books, there is so many information out there, and not all of them is accurate. And that's why the scholarly then research is important, because it gives us the clear view of what we know or what we think we know. And of course, scholars also have their own bias, and different scholars have
of
different
course.
approaches to magic and to all kinds of issues. And that's another labyrinth in itself.
Yeah, but it's
And,
it's it's valid.
but but the key thing is, if we lose ourselves in the scholarly research and reading everything that there is, we never end up doing anything. You know, and the experiential approach of trying to start kind of a setting up a space where you can just have a connection with a god or goddess. That's what most people do nowadays, and give us a small offering of mead or of water or of an apple or a poem, and speak, out loud if you can, to this god or goddess, and start creating this relationship, because we can talk endlessly about the theory of paganism, but it's when you've lived this paganism, and as we have, Marco, for decades now, it's when we understand that the gods, or what we call the gods, is a lot more subtler and a lot more multi-layered than just this kind of a modern explanation. Oh, those people in the past, they just talked about gods because they didn't have a clue about what was going on. Actually,
Yeah,
no.
because now, because now
All
they
the
do.
symbols, all these symbols, all these, let us say, aspects and objects that the gods have, and the animals especially, they just show different faces almost, different ways that we can understand what is that spiritual power or that spiritual principle, right? Or that kind of a cosmic kind of a principle, I sometimes say it is. And those principles are eternal. The principle of joy, of wealth, of sadness, of wisdom. They are all of strength. They are all. I just called upon different gods now by just using some of those words, and all those words, all those principles, we have them inside ourselves too.
The
So what we are
archetypes.
doing is communing with different parts of ourselves, but by doing it also looking for an external receptacle like a god or goddess, which is, don't forget, it's only again another device of the mind, as we were discussing earlier. It's our anthropomorphization of a concept that is beyond our full understanding because it's beyond our rational mind. Yeah. And that's when you engage with it with all your senses and with all your intuition and with creating a relationship with your heart. That's when magic starts. And then
What a,
it goes from
what a, what a I couldn't think of a better way to end this, right?
there.
That's where magic starts. I mean, I couldn't say it better. Thank you very much, Andre, for being with us in this
Thank you,
first
Marco.
third season, first episode of
It
the
has
Beat
been a
Podcast.
pleasure, and we could talk for hours, as we know,
And
and I
we
hope
will,
you
and we
will
will, and we will.
with some meats, and maybe we can do, in Portugal we have this expression tertulia, which
Yeah,
is when we gather a few people and we talk for hours. Maybe one of these days we could have with
one of these
several
days. Yeah,
practitioners. We could have one
and
of
please
those.
remember our viewers about the your next course slash workshop that you're going to give with Katie Gerrard.
Absolutely. So it's the a new Seidr course that me and Katie Gerrard are planning for September, starting on the 8th of September. It's a Thursday, and it's going to be every Thursday in September for 7 p.m. And with then a live session at Treadles Bookshop in London on the Saturday, the 1st of October. And you can see all the details on the Treadles Bookshop site, which is you go Treadles Bookshop and it will show up.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the comments down in the
Great.
description of the video down below in YouTube. Thank you very much once again, and to our viewers, thank you for viewing. Thank you for being with us. See you on the next episode of the Wyrd podcast.
Till next time.
Till next time.